And I've spent time in the jungles of Papua New Guinea through to the mountains of the Himalayas, through to the deserts of Southern Africa. I mean, I've been everywhere. And you have a very different view of the world, but you realize that the world is a beautiful, incredible place.
You have this theory, and I love it, and so many people on social media has reacted to that in a huge way. I've seen the responses. A lot of people identify with this. You mentioned that money is a scoring system, but at the end of the day, quality of life experiences, that's the ultimate goal, the bucket of the quality of life. And if I'm not wrong, I think you said at some point the best investment of my life, the one I will go irresponsibly long until the day I die, is quality of life. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah,
one?
it's quality of life and experiences. Right, we have one go on this planet that we remember.
Right.
And therefore, you can solve for quality of life in a number of ways. People get so Instagrammed. Quality of life needs to be the 8-bedroom house in Palm Beach.
Right. The Amalfi Coast with the super fancy dish and all that stuff.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can have the same quality of life of living on a beach in beautiful weather in Nicaragua. Big enough to have my friends at, low cost of living. And so if anything went wrong in my career, I could just go there. I could work in a bar and still, that is so liberating.
Yeah.
I de-risked my entire life in one go. And that's what I realized is these lifestyle ratchets where they can't take it away are super, super good.
That's also, I think, the moment that you, at some point, I think we had this conversation and you said, I was in Spain, I was walking on the beach, and I saw this giant table of like 20, 25 people with different generations, just like eating, laughing, sharing a bottle of wine, and having a good time in the middle of nowhere. And that's when it hit you and we're like, I want that.
That's right.
So you blended that, like, I'll win the game, I get a house already, cheaper, with all the perks of this quality of life, plus that,
Yeah,
right?
because I can have a paella on a Sunday in the orange groves with friends, cost basically nothing. That's like, wow. But I then pursued that dream, and I eventually moved to Spain in a beautiful, whether I was going to get there or not. But anyway, I was shark diving in the Galapagos.
Hey, shout out Ecuador.
Yeah, and I was with a bunch of people who were from the Cayman Islands, and they were like, well, why don't you look at the Grand Cayman? I'm like, no. It's where we are today. It's like, it's suburban. It's not nature. Well, it is nature. I mean, you can see here, but it's not nature. And I'm like, I want the remote tropical beach where it's just me and nature. And they're like, well, there's this weird place called Little Cayman. You might like that. I'm like, what do you mean? How weird? They're like 140 people weird. I'm like, that sounds perfect.
That's your kind of weird.
So I went there the following year and bought a piece of land, built a house, and then ended up moving here because I realized that I would get many of the things of the quality of life of Spain. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, the culture's not the same and not as deep. But I could live a very nice life in great climate. But I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, interesting people. If you think the default worker in Javier, in the town I was in Spain, was really, as I said, tourism, real estate, construction. The average person here, professional, is a lawyer or an accountant, right? So they're just from parents, they spend less money and they don't do productive work because they've retired. So we're fighting this mega trend of the baby boomers from World War II. The kids who got born after World War II are now in their 70s. And that was the largest cohort of people in all history. And so what we've got is slow growth, but massive debt. So what is happening is governments are having to print more money, and again, anybody from South America understands this. They print more money to pay the debt, but your wages don't go up. They only go up a bit. But what happens is things like houses, scarce assets, houses, gold, or even your ability to buy US stocks, they just keep going up. So you're getting poorer, your wages buy less. I'm not talking about buying bread and cheese. I'm talking about buying assets. What is an asset? An asset is future deferred consumption. You buy an asset like stocks. Let's say you buy an ETF in the S&P 500. Why do you buy that? Because in the future, you want to sell it to be able to spend the money.
For a profit, yeah.
Or pass it on to your kids, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but it's to be spent. And it's supposed to have a rate of return, so that doesn't work. And then you can say, okay, if you're in the US or the UK or something, they'll say, well, invest in your pension and buy the S&P 500, buy stocks. Great, sounds good, because stocks go up by about 11% a year, 12% a year.
On average, because they're in the recessions and this and that, but usually the average is that.
Yeah, average is around that over the last 20 years. Great. So that doesn't get you ahead of the 11% of debasement, 8% debasement, 3% inflation. So you're going nowhere. You're locking up money to go nowhere. Okay, it's better than nothing. Gold is the same. Most real estate is the same. So you're like, oh, okay, how the hell do I get out of this trap? Now, you have two answers. One is to invest in yourself and build a business. It's hard, but that's what you have to do. You have to generate cash flow to invest. If not, you can't invest.
Right.
So you need to generate cash flow. So you invest in yourself, build a business, do whatever you can, hustle, Google. They all exist. And over time, the authentic businesses build scale and people get to understand them. But in the early stage, you don't really know. So it's a feature of an early stage market, of a frontier. So what you're saying is, okay, well, we do have easy ways here. Is Bitcoin. You don't rely on anybody. It's this asset that's global, that's homogenous, that's available to everybody, that you can buy from your mobile phone, that cannot be destroyed, cannot be intervened by anybody. It's yours. Okay, well, that's an easy bet. I'm not now relying on a scam or anything else. There's no Ponzi. It just is. And then we look at Ethereum. Well, Ethereum's like this supercomputer of this new internet that allows you to have contracts online. Smart contracts. That's what makes Ethereum. So then you can do all sorts of clever stuff, whether it's from tickets to agreements to whatever. Human society is organized by contracts. So then what's the probability of scammed at the token level? 0. You see, everybody looks at it through their lens. And the lens may be, you're from Venezuela, so you think you can have it expropriated. Or a gold investor in the US, well, they took gold. They didn't do it in Europe. But different people use their different lens. But we don't realize, and so you're worried about regulation.
Right.
It's a global asset. The Chinese have banned it.
In
the Indians, nothing happens.
Right. Little dip here and
Why?
there.
Because this is a network of millions of individuals. This is not driven by the institutions. It doesn't matter whether they come or not. People want to be validated. It's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
Oh, BlackRock think it's good, so therefore I'm not stupid. It's like, you're not stupid because literally hundreds of millions of people are using this,
Right.
making money from it, building on top of it, and creating a new future. So therefore you can't be stupid. You do not need some bloke on television telling you that it's valid. So what we've done for the first time in history, if we go back to how I started this journey, those of us at the centre would get the opportunities. And then you would charge layers of fees until it comes down to the individual and reapply for your permit. And he'd been off for a year. And I just saw him last week. I'm like, Jules, what have you been up to? Were you working in the Philippines? It's like, no. I said, why not? He goes, Solana. He's like, I didn't need to work. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He goes, I made 10x in Solana. I spent a bit of that. Didn't work. So I spent a year with my family doing some good stuff, traded a bit of crypto. I'm like, okay. That's the empowerment.
That's what you call the lifestyle chips.
This is a barber from the Philippines that's working in the Cayman Islands. And he can not work for a year because of his investments. That's La La Land. Go to a barber in New York City and say, hey, you're not going to work for a year. Can you survive? No. Zero
Not even for a
chance.
week.
Yeah, 0 chance.
Jesus. You mentioned a keyword here into this whole thing. By saving or by anything, you mentioned asset, right? That would be the logic, what it demands. You put your money into assets. That's how you get out of the rat race. That's at least the idea we got by the system. But then...
Because you can, so just to clarify that,
Yeah.
you can earn income.
Right.
The game is to try and get some excess income. But if you don't invest into power. Now, after World War II, we had a huge issue. We had asked men, all our men, to fight and women to go through the hardship of war. 20% of the entire population of Europe was killed. Many people came back from war injured. They had nowhere to live. They had to rebuild their lives. And we started the National Health Service. So did several European countries. That's why the Europeans have free healthcare and the US don't. It's because we owed it to all of these people who came back from war injured. There was no way they could afford it, so the government had to. Okay, so people don't really understand the impact of World War I and II. They were so big. The other thing is that there were people, houses had been destroyed, people had to rebuild lives, and there was this young boom of baby boomers, and people couldn't afford to buy the houses. So the government built houses. They were called council houses. And you can get them for free.